My name is Andrew Phay. I work for the Whatcom Conservation District. I'm the IT GIS person here. And today we're going to be talking about Smartsheets. It's not going to be, this is how Smartsheets work. It's more of a, this is what we've done with Smartsheets. So the other presenters in the panel today are Ryan Williams from Cascadia CD and Sarah Jones from Snohomish CD. And to finish us up is Nicole Emerson from Whatcom CD. And then we'll go into some questions at the end. So hopefully we'll have a bunch of questions we can answer in the few minutes that we have left. So let's go straight into my Smartsheets setup. One of the best things I like about Smartsheets is for the average user, you can have a dashboard. So the administrator of the account can create a dashboard like this that the team members can go to and get all the relevant information for that day or whatever they want. On here we have our timesheets system. Let's do this. Our timesheet system right here, the Dovico. And right here we have our in and out board, which I don't want, which I actually left in on purpose. Normal. And you can easily come in and add and subtract items from this dashboard. And we're done. And here we have a service item request. I'm going to go through these pretty quick because we got a lot to go through in 10 minutes that I have. This is just a smart sheet that we created so people can put stuff like the lawn needs mowed or the front door lock is sticking. And they can click on it and get all the information that they need. And this I actually did. So when it's done, I can hit completed and save it and go back. And now that report should be updated and it should be blank at this point. So it makes it really easy for a staff member just to go in and put that in there. And some of those service item requests are months-long thing if we have to set up someone to come in and fix those. Also in here, as you can see, we have information on COVID. Ask for help is a form that we can fill out to ask the administrative people or your team leads for information or requests for doing something, inputting a grant, so on and so forth. And we have all the information people need to put in there. And that goes into a sheet that the person that it's assigned to will get a notification and they have it on their dashboard and they can see all the administrative stuff that they need to do. It's specifically helpful for our office administrator to keep track of everything that's going on. And we have equipment loan stuff it's a link outside of Smartsheets. So this is a Google calendar that our equipment gets rented out from. And you can see our manure spreader and poultry equipment who has it. So you can have links to outside of Smartsheets. And one that I guess a lot of people are interested in is our credit card receipt submission form. So if someone uses their credit card, they can go in here and choose their name, where it's from, the vendor, like going to Lowe's. I tend to go to Lowe's a lot to pick up stuff. And you can come in here and put this in. Now, when I put stuff in, if I'm going to Lowe's, I will attach the file and I will actually be in the parking lot taking a picture of that receipt with my phone, because this is also a mobile app. And I send that in and I keep the receipt for a few days just in case, but they now have a copy of the receipt, and the accountants and the bookkeepers can go through that at the end of the month. And on here, we also have different credit card purchases or payment checks, that kind of stuff as well, and different links to lots of different things. Here's our per diem right here. Also, I wanted to show how we do our board meetings. Our board meetings, let's see if we can get this going. Here is our board meeting agenda portal. It's just another dashboard that shows multiple reports. And they can join it from here, and our agenda items are here as well. And this is just a report that just filters out that particular date and puts it in here. And that's all I do. I go in here and change the date up at the top and change the agenda items down at the bottom on a different sheet, because they all come from this sheet, and people can add. We have another form that adds stuff to the top here, and then we can move it down later on. So and that's our board meeting. Oh yeah, I've got like 1 minute. Grant contracts, we also have all of our grants in here. So each grant has a folder, and we have a master contract list that takes information from that particular grant sheet and brings it into here, and we can quickly see how much money we have, what the dates, when it begins, when it ends, what's the remaining funds, and people can click on any grant and go into it and see what's there. That went a lot quicker than I thought. I'm going to pass it on to Ryan. And he should be able to take it from here.
Good morning, everybody. Is my screen sharing? It's the time tracking monthly.
Looks good.
Okay, great. So my specific implementation of Smartsheet was trying to solve a very particular problem I think most people have. I was trying to get to the point of getting knowing the exact budget status of a grant in as close to real time as possible. We've had several months where, there's times where you don't know how much money you have left because you haven't billed it in a few months. And so I really wanted to solve that problem. So basically I thought about where do I want to be? I want to get to the end of, I want to know how much time and cash expenses we've had on a specific funding source, and decided to do that, I had to have a timesheet system. So that is really what I built with Smartsheet, with some help from Smartsheet itself. They have an accelerator program where you can pay them to help you come up with a solution for your problem. In some ways, it can be a good cost or good ability to get something done without spending a bunch of time hitting your head against the wall. So what I did was, and this was also inspired by Whidbey Island CD, they had actually developed something close to this, and I ran with it. What I did is I created a full year of time. And in here I have basically I have, the date, I have a work completed column, funding source, whether it's office or field, as well as the hours, and if you earn exchange hours, and then there's some math around like daily hours and weekly totals to help you figure out if you're over, putting more than 8 hours in your day. And each one has a nested where you can do 8 entries. You can also add entries, add lines in here pretty easily just with the insert, and it does all this, it kind of has built-in formulas. And so in the funding source, I just put in a whole list of all our funding sources. The hard part with this is I have to keep this up to date. And with, say, 14 timesheets, I have to occasionally go through and update 14 funding source lists. Luckily, we don't change a ton, so that's not as big of a deal. There's some things that I wish could be done to make it easier. And if somebody knows a way to make it easier, I would love to hear it. And so what it does is basically you get, you go through, you do your entries, you have all these hours added in, and then I send it to another sheet that basically converts it to a more timesheet-like format. This is just a full list of all our funding sources, and there's formulas that look up, is this an office? Is this funding source? Is it this, this date, and so on, to help fill out this time card, which then converts it into an actual time card that kind of filters out all the empty lines. And so you start to see we're getting like, it looks like a more typical time card with even with a signature lines and so on. So somebody can just print it and then save it basically, or save it as a PDF. And so this, this is just the timesheet piece. This is something we do. We're on a every 2-week thing. So we're checking, we're basically, people are submitting their time. They basically do this, they hit print. They either do, right now it's an electronic signature, they could print it and sign it physically. Because when you do a print, it just spits out a PDF and it'll look like this basically. So you can go in and sign your time. And so, they kind of separated out with leave and sick and just kind of put together this whole system. It looks very similar to how it was before, but it's really nice. And then at the end of, after a couple days after a payroll, there's an automation that basically copies everybody's entries into a single sheet. And the point of that is to start getting into some of this math around expenses, right? So there's some rate tables in the background that looks up their comp rate and all that stuff, and the indirect for the grant, and puts it in there and starts doing all the math on hours, so we can kind of get a ongoing total of the expenses with this funding, with the, for each funding source on a per day basis. A benefit of this is you can also pull reports off of this single sheet, so you can pull up a report that says, how many hours for this specific funding source did you spend, during this month, or even I have it set up so it actually has a, sorry for scrolling, actually has a pay period listed. So like this one is January, the first pay period of January, and then there's a January 2, and that way you can even separate out to that level. But the idea is it'll help with billing. It could also just help with reporting, because everybody has done entries saying what they did, right? Like there's all this work around, did all this work, and you want to look it up. And so that was kind of another thing we were doing, right? Is you send an email out, what'd you do for my grant? And we were just trying to solve that problem a little more efficiently as well. And so kind of we had this part, and then the other side of it is the cash expenses. So basically that's an easy thing. You just pull it out of something like your financial software like QuickBooks, you paste it in, you assign it to the right funding sources. That takes me about half an hour a month or so. And that way we have kind of all our expenses are now in Smartsheet to go into this complex budget system I'd put together. There's a lot of crazy formulas in here, and I won't be able to explain them to you, but basically anybody has access to this in staff. They can go in, they can look at the grant they're managing. There's, you start drilling down. I have a lot of different layers in this, and the kind of the first layer is the budget status. That's the first thing on top. You start looking at, you start going into more detail. So this says, we have this amount of money left in the grant. You expand it more, you realize you have this certain tasks are fully spent. You have different spending. You go even deeper, and you have like a budget level where you're talking about, wages, benefits, indirect, all that stuff, travel, and so on. So you start going all the way over, looking at that. And then if you really want to know more detail, you expand it out even more, and you can get it by month, expenses. If you really wanted to see, what's the problem, or what's your expense rate, that kind of thing, you can look back at that. Generally you probably wouldn't need to go to that much detail, but starting out at the high level was kind of where I was at and trying to drill it down. Additionally, for my purposes, I just wanted to know like what hasn't been billed and what has been billed. So these are all referring back to sheets that kind of that we complete to like track this kind of stuff, where we have voucher details in there, where it just all is a math formula. It's this one's not as complex as some of them are, but basically it looks up external sheets, which is a really nice thing. It kind of links things together. So one person can complete something and it'll move it back across. And so kind of where I'm at with this is, I can get a nearly real time. It's usually going to be about a 2-week delay at the most, just because of the payroll cycle, right? Where it's kind of hard. You can't make formulas off of reports in Smartsheets. So that was a hard one for me, is I can't look at the current expenses for the last 2 weeks, but I can at least be as current as last month. So it's a really nice way. So almost out of time. This is a really fast overview of this. And basically what if you're interested, I can tell you more, or, there's just all kinds of things in the background to make this work. So now I guess I'll pass it off to Sarah, and she can show you her stuff.
Good morning. Let's see. All right. I am the Business Operations Director at Snohomish CD. We have had our Smartsheet just since the beginning of this year. And so we have built a variety of things, and I'm going to flip through a few of the tools that we've built to give you a pretty brief overview. So we went the easy route and used the standard dashboard, employee staff dashboard, similar to what Andrew showed and what we got from Palouse. We have a variety of things on here, and some of these tools are not actually built yet in Smartsheet, but we really wanted to be able to have them on the dashboard. And so some of them are pointing to places like our shared drive, where we're currently handling things. For example, reimbursement is not actually a Smartsheet tool. It is actually just going to our shared drive where people submit documents there. The other thing I wanted to point out that we do that has been really helpful is Smartsheet doesn't have a lot of capacity for big text. And so one of the things we have is a link on here to our intranet. We use G Suite, so we have a little intranet site where if we want to give people longer instructions or more text about how to do things in Smartsheet or do other processes, we use this Google site as a resource for our staff with more information. So one thing I was going to show everybody is our Billings Dashboard. We have a large number of grants, and they each have their own billing cycles and their requirements. Our finance team has 4 people, and then we have somewhere 12, 15 grant and program managers who are involved in the billing. So that's a lot of people and moving parts to keep straight. This has been a really helpful tool for us to be able to have a lot of transparency into what is happening on our billings and what is on time or maybe lagging a little bit. This dashboard gives each user a glance. Down here, I have pending tasks for people, including a Gantt chart. And these reports are set so that each user sees what is actually assigned to them, which after I had several questions, I added the yes, this is yours to it. For each month, we have an individual sheet that looks like this, where we have each of the tasks related to each of our billings and the person who's assigned to them, a start and end date so that we can create a Gantt chart and status. This has been really helpful. We're able to attach the billing documentation if the program person has programmatic documentation that they want to incorporate, they attach it in the Smartsheet, and we're able to quickly move through a lot of billings relatively smoothly most of the time. This has also been very helpful in terms of being able to balance work between people on my team in particular. We're able to look through here very quickly and see if anybody is behind, someone else can pick up a task. If somebody's out for the day, it's very quick to look through here, see what needs to be done specifically that day, and reassign it to another person. So this has been very, very helpful. In conjunction with our Billings dashboard, we have this link to outstanding invoices. And so we use the SBX accounting system, and our invoicing is done through there, but it's not very transparent to our program staff. So we have an outstanding invoices dashboard. And I particularly use this to communicate with our grant managers and our program staff to get them to help verify billing status and to help follow up when we have not received payment on something. So this has been a great communication tool to be able to triage who is going to follow up on this invoice. If there's something that needs more work or follow up, this allows us to quickly identify that and resolve the situation. The next tool I'm going to show you is our contract routing dashboard. And this really is mostly for me because I am the point person for reviewing and triaging all the contracts that come through our district. This has been very helpful. So if any of our staff are working on a contract and they need a signature from either the executive director or our board, they start by routing this to me through an intake form. When I get the intake form, I work with the submitter and figure out what are the appropriate steps that need to happen to get this contract to signature. And sometimes it's very easy. Sometimes it's just put it on the board meeting agenda. But obviously sometimes there's review cycles, there's getting input from multiple people, and we're able to list that out. And then on this dashboard, I am showing this report that has all the contracts that are in process and what is the next step that needs to happen. This helps greatly for transparency because any of the staff who've submitted a contract are able to go here and figure out where their contract is. I am able to look at this and keep track of what is happening. And then I just have a quick report here of what is on our next board meeting agenda so that anybody who is hoping their contract is going to get on that agenda can check here really quickly and make sure that it has gotten on the list. I also found in doing our annual report this year that my list of executed contracts was super helpful because I could just go there and pull out all the new interlocals to be able to report on that to the state auditor's office, as well as some other pieces of information. So that turned out to be very helpful. The next thing I was going to show is another process-oriented dashboard having to do with funding application development. At our district, we have a lot of staff who are involved in funding application development and a lot of staff who are really awesome go-getters who want to go out and find funding opportunities and write an application for it. And for purposes of resource management and making sure we're not overstretched, also making sure that we're really in line with our strategic plan and able to put out applications that are really high quality, we wanted to have some central organization around that. So again, we start with an intake form where if people want to route a grant application, we ask them to fill out an intake form. Our management team reviews the intake form and considers whether or not we have the resources and the capacity to make the submission great and on time. So we can see that we've got a quick report here that shows which applications are pending management team review. Once we move forward with the application, we have on the dashboard a quick view of what the status of the application is. These little widgets are based off of individual sheets that we set up for each project. So I usually work with the point person on the project to set out a plan for the application. And we use this as a template, which then is customized for each application, where we go through and figure out what are all the steps it's going to take to get this submitted, and who is going to do it, and when do they need to do it. So once we fill this out, we can track on our dashboard what our status is and how well we're doing getting to quality submission. And then the last thing on here is we just track a little bit of what's submitted and out for review so that we can keep tabs on what we're still waiting on a decision on, and be able to be ready when we hear that something has been awarded. All right, that's all for me. I guess, Nicole, I will hand it over to you.
You're muted, Nicole.
Go figure, right? The moderator, when becomes a speaker, can't get it right. Thank you so much, Andrew. All right, folks. So I'm going to show you guys a little bit different aspect to Smartsheet use. And I'm going to show you from two different perspectives. One, from my role as chair for the Center for Technical Development, I'm going to show you how what you see up now, how we integrated our annual plan of work into Smartsheet. And then two, in my role at the Whatcom Conservation District as a Science and Planning Director, I'm going to show you a project management application of Smartsheet. I also want to show you some ways to access templates and make both of these things a little bit easier for yourself. So what you've seen so far is a bit more of customized design of Smartsheet, which, don't get me wrong, is super awesome. But for sometimes the novice user, it's a little bit difficult to figure out, like, how do I build all that stuff? So I want to show you ways I've taken templates and then modified them a little bit better for my purposes and enhance some of those features. So what you see up here is just a couple lines, right? One of the beauties of Smartsheet is its ability to nest functions or lines within itself. And it just makes things a lot easier to utilize at different levels of things. So for the CTD, we have 5 different areas of work. In your district, you may have something similar when you're building your annual plan of work. You've got, what are those big, broad areas? In your annual plan of work, you're also required to set, what are our goals? What are our objectives? What are our metrics? Who's doing this work? When are we getting this done? How much is this going to cost, right? All of those different things that you put into that kind of funky Word format that you've got, that is really hard to utilize in that format going forward. So for us, integrating this into Smartsheet makes this a continuously usable and functional way to use our annual plan of work in an ongoing format and having many users in there. Beauty of Smartsheet too is you can share a sheet within and outside of your organization. And for me, that's really important because CTD, we are many conservation districts working together. So while you may not do that often, when we get to that project management part, it's a really nice feature. If you are working with folks or a company or consultant or other districts outside of your district, you can still share a sheet with them and they can be integrating in there, putting notes in, marking tasks done, and so on and so forth. It's really, really nice. So just to show you how this actually works in here, I'm going to expand one of our tasks. So here again, this is our broad areas of work. When you click that plus button, it now opens up what is within there. You can see here, for instance, we've started with what is our overarching goal for this task or this area of work, you can call it. And then within there, we have many objectives. What are our objectives or our short-term things to accomplish this long-term goal? And then within any objective, we have a list of what are those metrics of success that we will then be tracking within here in this sheet. And this is for our coming fiscal year, so clearly there isn't content yet on tracking in here. And you can see up here, you've got all of the different categories or areas that I'm tracking in this sheet, which are really easily editable. You know, if status here, instead of just saying I've got this set as a drop down to I want started or ongoing or in progress, you can change this to something else, symbols if you want, if that's easier to utilize. Just a lot of different ways that you can show progress or customize this to make it work for you. So it's really nice for us to check in on this often. So when we have our leadership meetings ongoing, we can pull this up and say, all right, guys, let's just remember, what is our overarching goal for our training area of work? Within that, here are short-term objectives. How are we doing on these? What are those metrics that we're tracking? Are we actually getting to meeting these? Are we providing recognition for completed training? Oh, we are. Great. How are we doing that? Let's add that to our notes section. Let's talk about how this is working. What % completion are we to that space? And more important than that, which you'll check in on, maybe you do that on a quarterly or biannual or annual basis. More important is, what are we actually doing in that space? So for instance, here now, below just what are our goals and objectives and metrics, this is actually what the heck are we doing, right? So this is where you're saying, okay, within event training coordination, these are the discrete tasks that need to get done. Here's their current status. Here's that time frame, the cost of that, and some notes. And what you can see over here is Smartsheet will automatically create Gantt charts for you, which is pretty cool. And as you say, okay, let's say we're 50% complete on a task, you can see that it will also fill in like a bar inside of a bar, how far along are you in that? So this is a really great way to visualize where are we in this process. And you can see this dotted line tells you what is your, like that current date line, if you will. And I have this set to a fiscal year so that it's giving me a discrete time frame in here that everything is set within. So it's just a really nice way to continue to follow that up. There's some areas, let's say, where we've got, I want to see where I've got someone. You can see there's a lot, by the way. So it really does like keep expanding, which is a nice thing that it kind of can collapse onto itself too. So you're not scrolling if you have an area of work that is a little bit time out. You can also see you can assign things to people in here, which is great because when someone is assigned something, Smartsheet can automatically send them notices, let's say when you're getting close to a start or a finish time, or when something is marked complete, they will get an email. A great way that you don't have to micromanage or remember to send reminders. Smartsheet can do all of that for you. It's really nice. And Ryan taught me a lot about forms and notices, and when a date hits, certain things can happen. There's a lot in the background you can set up of these work paths about when this happens, I want this to happen. I want a notice to send out when I change this from 50 to, if it goes above 50%, or a yes to a no. Boom, things automatically happen. It is a wonderful project management feature that I am really, really grateful for, because I don't always remember, oh gosh, I just sent so-and-so, an email, or like anytime I change something, like, God, that is just a lot of inefficient time. So really allowing Smartsheet as your delegator, or you are saying, okay, Smartsheet, I am delegating a task of sending reminders to other people. It is a lovely feature. It'll save you a ton of time. Same with internal to staff, right? As you saw with different timesheets or other things, when a date is hit, a notice is sent to everyone, or when this happens in a project, a notice is sent to a specific person, so on and so forth. It's just really nice. So again, you can see that this goes through a nice kind of cool part too. Let's say in coordination, we've got a lot of things going, and I can do overall budget items in here. I can also, you can see it'll do calculations very easily, very similar to Excel in a lot of ways, but not as good as Excel. Don't expect Smartsheet to do statistics for you. It can do a lot of basic math features. It can do some unique things in here with doing math with date lines and things like that, but don't expect too much from Smartsheet. Just remember that as well. But I can link this to the master budget sheet that is managed elsewhere in this system, which is really nice too. You can link to other things, and when you click on it, it will show you that. So this is just, again, a nice example of ways to integrate in your annual plan of work so that you are always following along with how are we doing on budgets, people, timelines, items, as well as those overarching goals, metrics of success, and in between those things, what are those shorter term objectives? I want to show you quickly as well how to utilize this. Sorry, there's a lot of things in here. What this looks like from a project management standpoint. So now I've moved this to a project that I'm doing with internal staff and external partners. And there's a lot of different levels. You'll see it looks relatively the same. It's a nice template that I've utilized and customized for myself. And this one here at the very top, you know, integrating in all of that general project information is really nice internally. And this is where you can see these little lines. I've got this linked to the greater budget sheet. So you can see when I click on that, it goes right to that budget sheet and that cell that I'm looking at. So it's a nice way that I can double check what's going on in the master budgeting with those values. And again, same thing here, but I'm doing more about I've allocated discrete staff time internally and I'm tracking those hours. I've got things more color coded as things happen and change. When I change percentages, colors will change, etc. So this again is just a different application of nice project management. And lastly, what I want to show you is when creating or building these, there are a lot of templates available to you, which is pretty darn nice. So when you want to create something new, you go to this plus button, which is their solution center. And when you click on that, here they are, right? So you don't have to start from a blank sheet, which is really great. If you're doing some of these simpler things or complex things, or you can see both there's like a simple one sheet template for project budgeting, for project management. These aren't perfect, but they're a great place to start. Or there's template sets where it's both a dashboard and a sheet for you, and maybe something else that is within that kind of set of template functions for you. So they've got this for the finance and accounting, for general management, and you can just see all these things change a little bit on what they've preset for you for templates. So you don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to make it really hard. You don't have to make it super complex depending on what you're trying to do. So hopefully as this has gone along, you've hopefully I've reduced the bar, if you will, from the other presenters about really high level successful things you can do with this that maybe took a lot of time to build, all the way down to something a little simpler, depending on what your staff or you need to do within here, from that basic project management or overall tracking. I personally like to keep things as simple as I can to reduce error functions and reduce the, kind of, oh, I missed one pathway, and so, oh gosh, what's happening? So hopefully that's helpful. So with that, Andrew, I will stop sharing my screen. Perhaps all four of us can come back on video, and I think perhaps questions time if you're ready for that, unless you wanted to show anything else.
Questions time. Are there any questions that someone has typed in?
Yeah, okay, so I will let folks know, please put your questions in the moderator hat, put your questions in the questions box, or please raise your hand if it's a lot simpler to ask someone or all of us something dynamically and have that conversation. There's a good chunk of time for questions, so we're happy to go back to something that we shared and share it again for you guys if you wanted to see a specific feature of that. So please ask for that as well. So a few questions that have come in, folks. So Zora asked about, I think someone was talking about making templates available. It might have been Sarah and or Ryan early on that said, yes, can you make all of these packaged templates and put them in a Smartsheet templates file? So is there a place, a hub, where we can put some of these things as templates and share with all districts?
Well, I guess I can answer that. There has been things that people have put out there, but it hasn't been kept up over the years. So maybe we should probably make one big repository. But if you see something that one of us has shown, we can throw that into a folder and share that out with you. Nice and easy. I think that's the best way to do it. And then that person will know, hey, you need to, a lot of these, you need to explain what's going on in that Smartsheets, because without that explanation, it's kind of, it takes you, 3 times as long just to actually figure out what's going on. So if one of us has something that you want to see, let us know and we will share out a folder and share it with you, because we also have to take out all of that information that's our district's data, so that it doesn't go to everyone else, especially personal identifiable information.
Yeah, so there was a follow-up comment on that too. Someone else had around the same time. It said when Smartsheet was first rolled out, PCD, Palouse Conservation District, had some basic templates set up. Anyone interested in sharing or starting with Smartsheet could access, and can we set up a similar group to share more advanced templates that districts are using? So another comment, seeing a lot of amazing ways districts are utilizing to help create efficiencies, and I'd love to have some of them. So maybe what I heard from you, Andrew, and maybe Ryan and Sarah, you can tune in as well to this conversation, that, some of these, like we said, are pretty easy to share. Others are so linked or have so much content, they're more difficult. However, maybe we can kind of give people the idea of it, and maybe it's a one-on-one kind of tutorial. If you want to adopt something more advanced that you see, you kind of work with that individual. I don't know, Ryan and Sarah, how that feels for you guys.
Yeah, Ryan and I have actually shared a bunch of things back and forth. So we've tried this, and for sure my experience is it takes a little bit of time to kind of clean up a set of resources to be able to share it. A lot of the things I shared and showed have multiple components behind the scenes that are feeding into the the public facing thing. And so it definitely is not just typically one sheet. It's a whole package of things. That being said, I'm very happy to share any of it, but I would agree with what Andrew said, that it's probably best to do this one-on-one. So that we can also have that discussion of how does this work, and how are, you thought you were getting one thing, but actually you have 20, and how do they fit together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, yeah, for mine, it's fairly well packaged, but I would have to just clean it. But yeah, I think I've had some great conversations with different folks one-on-one, and it usually takes a little while to kind of work through it and show how it works and how it's all linked together, and scare people and not to use it.
One other question, and then Zora, I'll come to you. I see your hand raised. I'll unmute you. There was kind of a comment here about what might be helpful to folks. So Catherine Lewis has been in conversation with myself and others. A few of us have started talking with CTD, new hat, about setting up a Smartsheet user roundtable, perhaps this summer and going forward, where our goal is to create a place to share ideas and uses more regularly, to be able to lobby Smartsheet more effectively for improvements that matter specifically to conservation districts. So please watch for more information in coming weeks about this virtual roundtable that will start up here later this summer. And if you would like to be involved in organizing this or a part of this, I will post a link in the website. You can contact me directly, info@wactd.org. And Catherine and Josh Monahan will also be part of that group, and we're trying to kind of establish. So stay tuned for that, just FYI, for more people who want to see some of this advanced use and or sharing of things. Okay, and then Zora, oh, wait, one more time. There we go. Okay, now you're unmuted.
Okay. Hi. So I'm glad that you said that, Nicole. I was gonna kind of speak a little bit along those lines. I have two things. The first is I came in late, so I apologize if this was shared already, but there is a conservation district templates workspace on Smartsheets that has the guts of a lot of what I think this has been built on, which is great to share. I know I've seen a few people that haven't known that that's there. But the other thing I wanted to say is that we see how impressive of a tool Smartsheets is. I've been to these talks for the last 2 years now. We have adopted Smartsheets in our district, but it's really from what I've seen, it's the larger districts that have the staff capacity to dedicate somebody to really build out this kind of system that allows you to take advantage of all Smartsheets has to offer. We've had Smartsheets for 2 years. We've used it a lot, but there's so much more that we can do that we really aren't able to because we just don't have the capacity. And I just really want to plug how valuable it would be if we developed a set of tools that all of us could just quickly adopt and then customize. That isn't, it doesn't take as much time, because doing it one-on-one, I get it. I mean, I've been here. I understand that doing this one-on-one is more effective, but it doesn't work for you guys. I mean, you guys can't help each one of the districts, and it doesn't make sense for all of the smaller districts that just don't have the staff time. So I definitely want to be on that work group, and I'm just going to put that plug out there.
Yeah, I hope the work group will actually help out with essentially doing what you're saying, is help out the smaller districts to actually put more emphasis in the Smartsheets and get the more complicated stuff done. But as I've seen Smartsheets develop in other districts, every single district is different. So, and they all want different things. To put something out there and templates and just everyone use this, it's not that easy, because every district's different and you have to go in there and manipulate it to make it your own. And that's where it gets complicated, and you need someone that actually knows what, has the experience to do that.
Yeah, and I agree. It feels like the difference to me between handing a blank piece of paper or a very, very loosely developed piece of paper versus handing a package, like a policy manual that we can then go in and edit. One is super overwhelming and it's never going to be finished. And the other one is like, okay, we could actually like make this our thing. We're going to have to make changes, of course, but yeah. Anyways, thank you guys so much. Seeing what you all do with Smartsheets is incredible, incredible.
Thanks, Zora.
I'll just chime in to say one middle ground idea, and maybe the working group can facilitate this, is maybe we can do a series of meetings where we're not just doing it one-on-one, but for example, we could have a meeting where we're like, everyone who wants this tool, get the template out of the work area, and then this is our work session where whoever built the template will walk everybody through how it's put together, and maybe we can have some efficiency that way.
That's a great idea. Yeah, it's a great idea.
Okay, we had a series of more technical questions come in as well. So the first one, has anyone developed an integrated process so data is entered only once and then assigned to different end products? And maybe that question needs more clarity, but perhaps can you guys answer that?
So it's put in once and it goes to multiple sheets is what because I've done the opposite of that. I have one sheet that has 5 different forms. It all goes into one form. Oh, everyone, like, it's for our payments and payments. So everyone will put something in one of those 5 forms, and it goes into one sheet, and then that one sheet ends up, you can report off of that one sheet. But having it go from putting something in one form and then going to multiple sheets, it can be done, but it will take a lot of automation to do that and a lot of testing.
So there might be a difference here between sheets and reports. So we definitely have things where somebody puts one piece of information into a sheet, either directly or through an intake form, and then that information from that sheet is used in multiple reports. which often are on dashboards in some fashion. So you definitely can have, I mean, that's very easy and a usual part of our use for sure.
Yeah, and so for me, I kind of have it fed into a single sheet just because I don't want multiple staff putting their time into the same timesheet, basically. But it spits out, and it basically there's like maybe 2 sheets that feeds most of my data. And there are ways to shift that data out with there's like a copy rows function automation, but it isn't very selective. It just copies all the data in the row and spits it into somewhere else. And so you need to have a sheet that has so many columns with data that it might get unwieldy. I know I've put in a feature request. I think it happened in the past where you used to be able to selectively copy column data, but it's gone or for whatever reason. So that's one thing that, feature request is also very useful. I have that hot linked, and I always ask for things to help make my life easier.
And 2 more questions in the same vein. One was, can you link and import from an Excel sheet? And I know you can import an entire Excel sheet, and then it creates like a Smartsheet from it, and you work from there. However, I think the question here, and maybe it's to another one, can you link to an Excel sheet and have that live? And someone else similarly asked, can information be exchanged automatically between, let's say, an external bookkeeping program and Smartsheet? And I believe the answer is no, but I would love to hear what you guys think.
The answer is maybe.
Maybe.
With Power Automate in Microsoft 365, you can actually set up triggers that will actually do all that, but maybe not the exact way you want it to do it. But you can set up triggers. Essentially, you're using 1 to 2 different third parties kind of thing to actually get all that done. And it might be possible, but my question is, do you want that? Because what happens if something goes wrong and then you don't catch it for 6 months? Maybe it might be easier just to copy and paste once a month or once a week that entire Excel spreadsheet and bring it in, which is relatively easy, but that gives you a double check, especially when you're dealing with finances. And I like to have that extra check in there. I don't like automating it too much.
So I will add that Smartsheet has an add-on that's called Data Uploader, which is extra money. We are currently using it just while we're in transition. One thing I forgot to mention earlier that people will probably be interested in is that we're building a cooperator management database in Smartsheet that we're hopefully rolling out to our staff in the next couple weeks. So we'll be ready to share that down the line. But we got this data uploader program mostly to handle our migration from Salesforce into Smartsheet, and I believe Data Uploader has that capacity. I've only used it for uploads where I'm triggering it, but I believe it has the ability to set a schedule of pulling information in. It also has the ability to set criteria where it's like, do you replace information or add it or update it? Do you get rid of stuff that's not in your new upload? So it does have some of that capacity, but it is an extra cost on top of your base package.
Okay, couple more questions here. Let's see if we can get through these in our time we have left. And by the way, there was a great comment about you will make your finance people crazy if there's no checks and balances. So that was a good point that both of you guys made about like, ooh, yes, but, right? So there is certain applications maybe that's not smart to do versus others it's okay if there might be an error or some changes in it. Okay, are any of you using Smartsheet to track the progression of deliverables from the initial implementation to grant reporting to storing them in a historical database? Stephanie mentions that she's working on something at Palouse CD, but haven't quite figured that one out. So anyone doing the full meal deal? I think I know I'm doing like the beginning of that, but not the middles. But I know that Smartsheet will create reports for you from sheets. So there is that. I have not explored that very much, however. Through that project management templates, I think is what this will hit on, but I haven't explored it. Any of you guys?
Not that much, not that detailed, I should say. It's more of a generalized tracking.
Okay. So Stephanie, I will say, if you figure that out, you can present next year at Smartsheet 2022, which would be great, honestly. Sorry, I missed. Here it is. Have any of you found a way to collaboratively share a dashboard between conservation districts? For example, having multiple sheets owned by different people report into one dashboard.
You can do it. The issue is everything that dashboard references also has to be shared with those other districts. And that causes issues when you forget that one little sheet or that one little share, and then it can be done because you can put it all into one workspace and everyone in that workspace has that information. So it can be done. Yeah, it can be done. And now we're almost out of time.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you, Andrew. So any last comments, Sarah or Ryan, that you want to share before we wrap this one up?
Just that I'm very happy to share what we've done and answer questions. If anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Yep, same for me.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank all of you very much. And Andrew, I can let you kind of wrap this session up. But I will say from CTD standpoint, folks, please look for both, hopefully, a dedicated training coming up on Smartsheet from the Smartsheet folks about just getting yourself going and maybe opportunity to ask more technical questions, as well as perhaps a quarterly networking group to highlight maybe a specific sheet, as Sarah gave a great example of that. Here's the one we're going to talk about today and really walk through that. So hopefully you've got many opportunities that are in the works right now that will be delivered coming up in this next year.